Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cup O Capital. Good morning, Becca. Do you have your coffee?
Hey, good morning, Betty. How are you?
I'm good. I'm pretty excited that we're here today once again to talk about legislation. I know it's been a couple of slow weeks and we really haven't had much to talk about. So normally at this time I would be, celebrating sine die because typically in an election year, the legislature likes to leave by Memorial Day weekend, but unfortunately, no sine die. They're still in session. So, but we still have lots to talk about.
We do. And based on the last alert you sent out on what's happening in the legislature, I thought that there may have been some compromises going on with the budget. I'm wondering what's going on between the legislature and the governor. Any new news on the budget? Or are things pretty stagnant?
They're pretty stagnant. My inside information, my spidey sense, folks down at the Capitol are talking about that where we are on the budget. And my understanding is that the House and the Senate, the leadership, of both the House and the Senate are good. They've come to agreement. They are having some super secret meetings on how to move forward with the budget because there's a lot, right now that we have going on. So we have very slim majorities in both chambers. We've talked about Boyer in the Senate being a holdout for $800 million for education. There's some folks over in the House side that want certain things. So with these slim majorities in each chamber, it's really putting the legislator leadership, I should say, in a bind. And mostly that's because we can't shove policy in the budget the way that we've done previously. So we really leadership really has to determine what they're going to give in order to pass a budget, whether that's negotiating with the Democrats for a bipartisan budget, or giving into some of these majority members' wishes. So it's interesting. And they are having conversations, of course, with the governor's office about all of this, but we don't have anything at this point that even resembles the possibility of introducing a full budget. So who knows? I think we're going to be where we were last year, which is all the way up to June 30th. It literally could take another month.
Wow. Thank you for giving us some background on the budget process. Specifically, when you were talking about not being able to include policies in the budget, that really gives us a clear picture. As you said, the budget's stagnant. So I'm assuming that with the stagnancy on the budget, that's going to affect what's going to come with the $5 billion, not million, like I said last time, $5 billion surplus. Yeah, I remember last time we met, I misspoke. So I'm wondering, because of the stagnancy in the budget, does that mean that there is a hold on that surplus as well?
Well, that's a whole part of the conversation and some of the holdups. So, the governor's office, and I think leadership knows what they want to do with that money. There's a percentage that they want to give to one-time projects, and then the remaining is going to be used for ongoing line items. The leadership definitely has what they want to do with that. And that's where we have to kind of go back to, well, then what's the holdup? Well, in the Senate, that holdup is that Boyer wants his 800 million for education, for aspects of education. I don't want it to make it sound like he wants 800 million for school districts. That 800 million is for a variety of different things, some being public education, some being for those vouchers. There's a bunch of different stuff. But then over in the House, those folks are wanting certain pieces of legislation to be heard and voted on before they're even willing to support a vote on the budget. So different reasons. But yeah, I think leadership has a firm, exactly. They have a firm understanding of how they want that money. Now, if they're not willing to do any one of those, then that's where they're going to have to maybe step back and start talking to the Democrats, and then maybe using some of that $500 billion, like Austin Powers.
Austin Powers, right?
For transportation, public housing. I mean, not public housing in the sense of like so much of like Section 8, but that's a piece of it. But like the rent, like the housing situation in Arizona is just, oh my gosh. So who knows where we land on that? But
right, that's crazy.
But there's a big thing that is important in all of this is that Arizona needs to pass what we call the water bill. The water bill is a long-term solution to fixing our water crisis that we have in Arizona. And so that bill needs to get passed before we pass the budget, but there's still no compromise on what the language and the solution to the water crisis in Arizona.
Would you be able to elaborate about the water bill? So you were talking earlier about, you and I were talking earlier before we went live about the water crisis, but I'm wondering if you could expand for our audience what that means for our state and why it's such a huge concern.
Yeah, I will do my best. So I'm sure lots of our viewers and members in our community have seen on the news, that our water table in Arizona is vastly reducing. We can see the pictures of Lake Mead, pictures of Lake Powell. Our water is just depleting because we've been in such a huge drought. We have not had the rain to balance the drought over the last 10, 20 years. We have more people moving to Arizona, which is then using up those limited resources of water. And then we also have the agricultural industry that Arizona has, right? Like cotton, cattle, citrus. That's 3 of our C's of the 5 C's of Arizona. So, I mean, so you know, having to balance growth, population growth, balance the rancher and farmers' needs for water, and then having to balance Mother Nature not giving us the water. So the Colorado River is a huge, like that supplements so many different states, not just Arizona's water, but California, Nevada, Colorado, you know, New Mexico. So the water bill is what we're calling the water bill, is how do we create a solution to the water crisis in Arizona that can meet everybody's needs. I know that there's conversations and talks about, you know, drilling in a pipeline. You know, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's how crazy our water crisis is like, are we going to have to pull in from an aquifer in the middle of America, right? Like from the Great Plains and bring it here? Because we don't have enough water in Arizona to sustain the growth that we have. I mean, it's amazing that we have such a booming economy in Arizona, that we have, you know, all these people coming to Arizona because they love our state. But within that comes some challenges. And we just, at the end of the day, we don't have enough water to sustain all of that. So moral of the story, the water bill is the legislators' attempt to solve that crisis in Arizona. Okay. So real quick, I need to check out my window because for the viewers, I live in DC and there's a tornado watch. And so I need to look and make sure there's no tornado because the skies just got really gray. So hold on. Okay, no tornado yet. So we're good.
Okay. Oh, we need to make sure that you are safe. Run away, Betty.
I'm dedicated to giving you all the tea at the Capitol before I go run in my closet with a pillow over my head. Just a little fun. It's not serious right now, so we're good.
But safety first, for sure.
I'm going to watch our emergency videos later.
Good thing it's just a watch. So, and I'm glad you're being so vigilant.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much for talking more in depth on the water bill. I can imagine the infrastructure that it takes to ensure that the resources are being provided. Because if you think about how much we use water every day and for the various reasons we use water, it's definitely a huge issue. So speaking of bills, I noticed that there have been some minor updates with bills regarding elections. Do you mind going into that? Because it's very important for us as citizens. We have the right to vote, so these bills will influence us and our community.
Yeah, yes, definitely. So this past week, there hasn't been much activity, but each of the chambers did have a third read and some final read calendars. So on those calendars, we saw a couple of election-related bills. A couple of these were controversial. One was 2602, which is a bill that's been a bill that we've been monitoring, and it's been part of our weekly alerts. That bill, House Bill 2602, would have prohibited the use of emergency vote centers and can only be used for the purposes of an actual emergency. So, for example, this bill stated that this tornado that may be coming down, if it was election day, I could run to this one building because that's an act of God, and I can only vote at that emergency center for that purpose. So essentially that bill eliminated the ability to emergency vote. So, but good news, that bill failed. So emergency
Fantastic.
voting, yes, it is. So emergency voting stays the way it is right now, the way it's been in the past. So if a county chooses, and this is where I have to be very clear, because county elections are done at a county level. So if a county board of supervisors chooses to approve a plan that includes emergency voting centers, they're still allowed to have those. For any kind of emergency. We don't have to determine if it's a tornado or an act of God. You get to determine what is an emergency in your life.
I find that really interesting because you mentioned that it just failed by only one vote. And so I'm thinking, why would anyone not be in favor of that bill? And if I happen to live in a county where I wasn't able to place my vote, that's taking away my right to vote. So, I'm trying to wrap my brain around that concept.
So the intent of the bill was essentially to say that emergency voting should be exactly that. It should be for emergency. And the supporters of that bill feel that the emergency voting system is being taken advantage of by voters. So instead of and so that's what their intent is. That's what they're saying is like, no, we need to go back to what emergency voting really was for. Now, this bill, whether or not you agree with emergency vote centers, this bill wasn't doing that. This bill was literally throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And what I meant by that is it was like, it just went to the extreme of trying to curtail an issue or a solution for a problem that does it exist, does it not exist, who knows. But it's also an election year, and so that motivates a lot of people.
That makes sense. And of course, you have to be really clear in the definition of what an emergency actually entails, because you're right, people can't take it and run with it.
Exactly. And this bill didn't do that. So I think if you saw something like that, you would probably get more support, and that bill would have probably passed. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at our list. Are there any other bills that you wanted to mention from the list?
Yeah, there was a couple of other voter bills I'm looking at right now. Two of them, there was two voter registration bills. One passed and one failed. So I want to, these are important. So one that is that if you moved counties, so let's say, Becca, you live in Maricopa County, right? Okay.
Yes, I do.
And you're a registered voter in Maricopa County. Let's say that you moved to Coconino County. Coconino County can send a notice to Maricopa and says, hey, FYI, Becca Bailey just registered to vote in my county. So Maricopa, you go ahead and you cancel her voter registration in Maricopa because she's now one of ours. So that bill passed. The other voter registration bill that did not pass was the cancellation of voter registration responsibilities for voters who are dead. And I want to go in. Oh, excuse me. Wait, I lied. Ignore me. Both of those bills passed. If you died, the county can clean up your voter registration rolls. If you moved counties, the counties can clean up the voter registration rolls. So those two passed. What did not pass was the bill, and I believe it's bill, I'm going to find this bill number for everyone, 2238. So 2238, House bill. This bill failed, which is a good thing. This bill said that county election officers would not be able to use drop boxes for early ballots. So, which is like unheard of. And it's kind of crazy that we would want to take away these drop boxes. You know what I'm talking about, right, Becca? The drop boxes?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually used the drop boxes myself, so it's interesting they're considering taking them away.
Exactly. As early voters, which our community primarily is, you want to be able to, you know, maybe you don't trust the post office, or maybe you know, it's too late to mail it back. So you drive your car and drop it off in a county drop box. So those are still allowed because this bill that would have prevented it has failed. So drop boxes still at this moment are allowed to continue.
What was the concern of the drop boxes? Is it because they were unmonitored drop boxes?
Well, it goes, yes, that's what they're concerned. This goes back to the 2020 election controversy. There is, and I'm going to be very clear here, and I'm sure that there's members who may, in the community who may not agree with me, and that's fine, but I'm just going to base this from my experience as working at the Secretary of State's office. Since the 2020 election and all the lies and all the controversies around that election being stolen, there has been a lot of chatter that people were taking ballots and just essentially stuffing these election drop-offs off with false ballots. There's a movie out right now called, don't watch it. It's called 2000 Mules. And essentially what they're saying is that people are getting paid to traffic ballots to Arizona and other polling places to, you know, sway an election. So it's part of this whole concern, fear, conspiracy, however you want to define it. I'm not here to define it for someone, but that was the intent. Like, guess what? They think that people are stuffing these county election drop boxes with ballots that are fraudulent. So they wanted to just remove them. And I can say this does not happen. It does not. As a person in a family, you are allowed to drop off the ballot, an early ballot, for anyone who lives in your household. So you could have 7 people living in a household. We have multi-generations who live together, who are all registered voters. You have individuals that 1%. You're allowed to do that under Arizona law. You're allowed to take, everybody in your household's ballot and just drop it off. That does not mean that you're committing fraud, because we're supposed to make voting convenient. In a secured way.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about my household and thinking about households in general. And how would that situation differ from someone who is in a situation where they may need assistance completing their ballot and getting the ballot in the drop box? Can you talk a little bit more about that, what that situation may look like?
And the signature of a person who assisted that voter being placed on the envelope before it's submitted.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm understanding. So can you repeat that?
Sure. Yeah, you were saying that if there are multiple registered voters in one household, I can take their ballots and I can then put those in the drop box. Now, thinking about a different situation where you're not living in the same household, where someone needs assistance with their ballot and getting their ballot sent in, is that allowed?
Arizona law says that you can send a ballot if you're, okay, there's two different questions there, what I heard, which is why I wanted to get clarification. You are not allowed to go and drop off someone else's ballot that does not live with you. That is not allowed. Even if they need assistance, that is not allowed. There's other processes in place. Let's say if that person is unable to go to a polling place or to an emergency vote center due to a disability, each county has what's called special election boards. You would call the county and request a special election board to come to your house to allow you to vote. And that's done in a bipartisan way. It's more, so you have a member of the county along with volunteers from each party that come with that county election official to your home or to the hospital or to wherever to help you vote. So special election boards are for people in emergency medical situations and for individuals with disabilities. So to answer that question, if you had a loved one that could not go, they would need to call way ahead of time once early voting. So they would need to call at the moment that early voting starts and schedule for someone for a special election board to come to their house. Okay. Yeah.
Great.
Now, if you're
that clarifies things and it makes sense to me, because I had remembered hearing that you couldn't send a ballot in for someone else, but I had heard of the special election boards. That's great.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so those are the bills that were being heard this week down at the Capitol. The only other thing that really happened this week, and I shouldn't make light of it, excuse me, because it's very serious, and that is, the senator from legislative LD6 is 2 weeks ago, she sent out a tweet after the Buffalo shooting. I think we talked about this. Maybe we didn't.
I do not believe we did.
Yeah. So she sent out a tweet after the Buffalo shooting. That was inappropriate, offensive, and hurtful. Everyone agrees of that. There was a motion made on the Senate floor by the majority member, leader, actually, Rick Gray, to do an ethics investigation into the motivation behind the senator's tweet. So this week, the ethics committee met for the first time regarding that tweet, and are starting to investigate what should that tweet, what was behind the tweet, and whether or not there's going to be any consequences. So pretty big deal, but we'll see what happens from that.
Wow. I'm just thinking about the world we're living in right now. We are part of a generation that was pre-social media and all that is happening now. And so the things that are happening in our world today and the things that we're facing and having to address is just so different than what we experienced growing up. So I guess we'll see what happens with the ethics committee moving forward and whether or not that will have an impact on the work that the legislation does. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. We grew up, right? Like you said, with no social media. We remember the AOL chat room started when we were, in high school and college. Like we didn't know. Made you laugh. I mean, so we've seen it, and we've seen, so we know what it was like pre-internet and where we've come today. It's just we just have to remember to be kind to one another, and everyone's living a story that we don't know, and it's easy to hide behind the internet, but at the end of the day, there's people as well, and so I think we have to be mindful of that. No.
Yeah. Where is the civility? I mean, everybody has a right to their own opinions and feelings and what have you, but where's the civility?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, hopefully it comes back soon. I know that hopefully we'll see compromise down at the legislature with the new budget. Our leaders can work together, and not just on the budget, but on the water bill and any other thing that's impacting our state and its citizens. That's so important right now, more than ever. It's been a rough couple of weeks, I think, for everybody. And so just, as we end the show today, it's not to make it all depressing or anything. We want it to be, uplifting, but, just we all play a role. We all play a role in being kind to one another and making sure that, like you said, Becca, it doesn't matter where you fall on the political, spectrum. We all have the power to make a difference and change in our communities. So let's start with the positive.
I agree.
All right.
Well, thank you, Betty, for sharing what's been going on this week at the legislature, and I look forward to hearing more. Hopefully the next time we hear something, it's going to be about the budget or other things prior to June 30th. Let us hope.
Let's hope, guys. Let's hope. So with that, you all have a good rest of your day and enjoy the coffee.
Yes, enjoy. Happy Friday and happy Memorial Day. We're thinking of all of you.